Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this beautiful, cold, windy. I love this kind of weather, man. Ducks are starting to make their way down south. I think a lot of them, I think they took the Greyhound. That's why it's taken so long for them to get here. The ones that left from Canada and the Prairie Pothole region of America, that Greyhound bus ride down here to Arkansas, that's a good I'd say that's about a good 3 weeks with 973 stops along the way. But ducks are starting to get here. Had some friends send me an update this morning. 3 limits of greenheads, mallards, with their scrap ducks by 6:50 a.m. That's pretty darn good. Of course, we also know there's a little bit of embellishment with a lot of hunters. They're like fishing stories. Okay. All right. Dudley Dawson, hogville.net, is going to join us here in the first segment, and we got a lot to talk about with Dudley. Jake Wimberly, ESPN 105.9, The Afternoon Drive down in Jackson, Mississippi, checks in with us. Hour number 2, Doug Dean, the AU Dose down in Birmingham. And Jordan Davis Hill, 24/7 Sports, covers Georgia. We'll talk with him as well. A lot of people will tell you after watching the game Monday night, Michigan 34, Washington 13, that Georgia was still the best team in the country. They would have beaten the hell out of any team in that playoff, foursome. So, it's fun to guess and all. And I'm going to get Dudley in here, and then Trip Keeter is going to join us here in about 7 minutes from over in Searcy. I want him to be on here, and he obviously is in Arkansas, but Dudley's one of the better mentors that you'll find anywhere. And True Grit journalism is alive and well, and it always is when Dudley is, with that badass background he's got of the Celtics, Christmas, Barnwood. And Dudley, real quick, before I get Trip on here, one of our over in Parkin, where the hunting club is, Sonia Lewis is she's a listener now to the show, watches the show, huge Patriots fan. And she was asking me, what's the future look like for the Patriots? And I'm thinking, Cowboys, Patriots, between the two of them, they've won 11 or 12 Super Bowls. And right now they're on divergent paths. But you look at NFL, college. The one thing about college is you can keep a great thing going for a long time. Is it harder with like the Dallas? I mean, Dallas beat the Redskins. They beat the pants off of them the other day. I enjoyed watching that. My brother-in-law and all of them up in Virginia, they're all Skins fans. Everybody over there is, but that's still a great rivalry, isn't it?
Yeah, and they had a couple plays early that, the blocked field goal and an interception, and they were playing us tough early, but Cowboys got it going. The Patriots, the answer to me, and I'm not saying this, I'm not breaking any scoops. Mike Vrabel is probably the guy for them. Great coach, had last couple tough years over in Tennessee, but I think he would be a great coach for them and kind of get them back going. Obviously, get a high draft pick, so they're going to be okay. And that's a product of winning so much and having high draft picks and missing on a quarterback.
Yeah, well, let's talk now about, and Trip's going to come on. And I know you cover what I love about you is you cover Arkansas, the high schools, and you've got to cover the high schools to know what's going on in college. At least it helps a lot when we watch these guys rise up in their careers. Arkansas, and I know Otis Kirk mainly does recruiting for hogville.net, but they've made a lot of noise, good noise, in the portal. And that's what the Hog fans, and I talked to a lot of them, are wanting to know about. The quarterback room with Bobby Petrino, to me, that's automatically going to be upgraded. Kind of give us an update on that room. And then the offensive linemen, the guys that played last year, how many of them you think are going to be back, and how many of them are going to be starting compared to what they ended with this year?
Well, let me start out by saying this. When I came on the show last Wednesday, I was talking about the situation where I thought they had done okay in the portal, but not as good as they could have been. That Friday, 2 days later, they picked up 3 very big chips in the portal and moved from in most rankings from in a early 20 ranking to into the top 10. So I think that was a big move for them. They've still got some scholarships left to give out. You'll probably see those happen, after spring. As far as the quarterback room, obviously KJ is at the University of Central Florida now, and you wish him well down there. He took a little heat. I don't get that. I guess the familiarity breeds contempt at times, but I've never acquiesced to that sentiment. I do think that Coach Trito really likes Taylor Green. That's why he brought him in here. He looks like Matt Jones when he's running. You've got Jacoby Criswell, Malachi Singleton, and Austin Ledbetter, who was a great high school quarterback here in the state of Arkansas, decided to go baseball. Did fairly well, got to pitch in the College World Series and all that, but now he's going to attempt that route. So I think they're in a good shape in the quarterback room. Especially, this is what I'll say, the depth in that quarterback room is to a point now that if you have an injury to your starter, whichever one the starter is, then you shouldn't drop off as far as you did when the well-traveled backup quarterbacks that they've had here, weren't able to be successful.
Yeah, and the number one thing about Arkansas, everybody looks at the offensive line and says, why can't Sam Pittman go in there and just wave the magic wand and fix that? Jason Caldwell, Auburn Undercover, said a couple of weeks ago, he said, there's 16 schools now in the SEC with football heading into next year. They're all trying to sign about 5 offensive linemen every year. That's 80 if they all do it. Now, some schools don't sign 5 every year. Auburn's one of them. That's why they're so god-awful on the offensive line and have been for a long time. I mean, they're horrible. But you're trying to. He said maybe there's 20 or 25 of them that are really good. So you got to be able to develop them. With Bobby Petrino coming in, do you think Sam Pittman's going to abdicate a lot of that authority and say, I'm going back in the offensive line room. I'm going to live there. I'm going to live or die with what I know best?
I think he'll certainly, it would make sense for him certainly to offer up more advisement than maybe he has been doing. Eric Mateos is now the offensive line coach. He's got 2 more offensive linemen that they're working on, but they're bringing in 5 new ones. I would say that the offensive linemen who have left have either been injured or underperformed. I think they're in a situation where the young ones that we expected so much of because they were so highly regarded, he'll take those in, and him and Coach Mateos will do their best to try to get their potential. Now, do I think that as far as starters, I think it's totally open. I think it's absolutely totally open that nobody on that offensive line should think they're going to be a starter. It's going to have to be some great competition, and either you get it done or you may be in the portal next year.
Yeah, got it. Trip Cater, you're over there in Searcy. I saw a picture from you, Dudley. He was up there in Fayetteville last Saturday for that Auburn basketball game. You watch Arkansas, and you're a rising young reporter, and you follow Dudley and what all he's doing. What about Arkansas? Are you excited that Texas and Oklahoma are coming into the league, and then you look at what Missouri's doing? But does that also frustrate you and say Missouri got 3 of the top 9 players out of Arkansas? That can't happen.
Well, I'm both excited and nervous about Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC because one thing, I do not like the Longhorns at all. I had a lot of fun the night they came to Fayetteville, got to rush the field and all that. That was a great night back in 2021. And then Oklahoma, I mean, they're just a whole storied program. I mean, they have a talented team, it seems like, every single year. The Sooners do. So getting to see them as a conference opponent for the first time is going to be something to see because for a long time, about half a century ago or more, in the early days of Arkansas football, Oklahoma and Arkansas were actually fierce rivals. for a long time, even though they were, in different conferences. So that's going to be fun to kind of reprise that rivalry. And then what you said about Missouri, honestly, it is frustrating. It is really frustrating seeing them basically come into the state of Arkansas almost every year and, kind of pick apart our best high school athletes, particularly guys like Courtney Crutchfield and Austin Dendy from Pine Bluff High School. Those two guys, they can play. They can play ball. And especially Courtney Crutchfield. I mean, he's probably one of the best athletes out of the state of Arkansas, period, in the history of the state. And seeing him switch to Missouri wasn't surprising, but was also, upsetting to see. Coach Eli Drinkwitz, I believe he is an Arkansas native, so he knows the state pretty well. So I'm not gonna lie, the rivalry between Arkansas and Missouri did feel, very manufactured at first. But every year they beat us, I hate them more and more. I'm not gonna lie to you, Rob. I'm starting to develop a hatred for the Missouri Tigers.
The losing to Missouri hadn't been the biggest deal. It's been the curb stomping, and then the Coach Drinkwitz knows how to get under people's skin. And he's not just Arkansas, but because he's gotten some recruits. I think that is in kind of upping the rivalry a little bit more than Arkansas actually getting beat on the field. Interesting note here. Eli Drinkwitz, Gus Malzahn, Sam Pittman, all born in Oklahoma, but spent most of their life in Arkansas, or in Coach Pittman's case, 70 miles from Arkansas as an Arkansas fan in Grove, Oklahoma. But it's you have to give him credit. There's a lot of background noise about why Coach Drinkwitz is so upset at Arkansas, or so gigs him so much. But man, to the winners go the spoils, and that's the deal. I think most fans would have no problem whatsoever with Eli Drinkwitz if he was at Arkansas and winning and doing what he's doing. But when you're doing it to you, that makes you infuriated, I think would be the right word. Yeah.
Dudley, looking at now, let's switch and talk, because it's good that Arkansas, their portal class is 4th or 5th best in the SEC. What are you more concerned about right now? Jason said, I've never seen it where you can more quickly fall off a cliff and your program just really be in the ditch with 4-ball tires and no gas, or you're on top of the world with a full tank. Would you agree with that? And look how quickly Arkansas.
2 years ago, you're getting bumped up to $6 million a year as a head coach, and after hiring Jimmy Sexton, and then 2 years later, it's on a Sunday afternoon, and you're having to stay by the phone, stay by the internet, because you might get fired. And he goes into the season, and I'm not breaking these scoops here. He's going into the season on a very hot seat. That buyout goes down. We all talk about what a good guy he is, because he is, but it's a business-oriented, results-oriented business, and it's going to have to be real good. They don't have Oklahoma next year, but they have Oklahoma State, who is in most of these early, too early preseason top 25s for next year. So that's just another game to throw in there. The schedule's not as hard as it has been, but it's still early on is when you've got to get some confidence. And I think if they could go to Oklahoma State and win, that would certainly benefit them in terms of down the stretch, which let's be honest, it's been a situation here. One possession or one score losses, or one possession, one score wins have been, whether they've been successful and whether they have hope or not.
Yeah. And it's Trip, you're coming up, you've been following the Razorbacks for a long time, and the SEC, you love the SEC. It's a great conference to be in, and Arkansas is competitive in every sport. They struggled this year in football. What are your expectations based on what Dudley's talking about with the portal, with Sam Pittman, of this upcoming season, with Bobby Petrino included in the mix now as offensive coordinator?
Expectations are a little bit mixed. For one, got Bobby Petrino coming back, obviously. I feel like that he's going to have a kind of good cop, bad cop approach with he and Sam Pittman during a practice. Because I remember when he was still the head coach about 13 years ago, he was a very aggressive coach. And I have firsthand experience told to me by a buddy of mine who an alum of Heber Springs High School who played under him at the University of Arkansas, Braylon Mitchell. So he was a very fierce coach, but the players wanted to play for him, and that's why I'm real excited that he's back as the offensive coordinator. Second, the transfer portal is such a hard thing to follow in college football because for Arkansas, I feel like the Razorbacks have one of the most transfers going out of Arkansas, and very few coming in. Dudley mentioned earlier Traylon Green from Boise State, the quarterback. I saw his highlights. He looks really, really good. But we also have Jacoby Criswell coming back this year. I believe he's going to be a sophomore next fall, who looked really good as well when he got some playing time last season. So honestly, I think the highest expectation that I would have is obviously would be improvements in the offensive line, because when Arkansas gets stronger in one part of the field, they get weaker in another part. Last year, in 2022, the weakest part of the team was the defensive secondary. That got better this past season at the expense of losing a really good offensive line. Now I believe that the offensive line is going to be much better, but now you can't help but wonder, what's the weakest part of the field going to be for Arkansas? Is it going to be in the backfield? Is it going to be maybe the defensive line? Maybe is it, who's it going to be?
Yeah.
Great analysis, by the way. It's fun to watch this. I'm just saying.
Yeah. And Dudley, that's why I wanted him on here with you, is because, I want these young guys to learn from the best, and that's what you are. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me on instead of bringing on the best. But what I will tell you though is, I don't worry about the defense at all. These guys that came in here last year did a great job at improving the defense. Obviously, there was a big swing and a miss at the offensive coordinator. I expect the offense to be better this year. You can't really get much worse. I mean, you cannot complain anymore about the offensive line coach. He's no longer here. Y'all all wanted him gone. Now he's at Mississippi State. And I'm not saying he did a great job or anything. I mean, it was a big drop off. He didn't quit learning. He didn't quit knowing how to coach, but it just didn't work overall. It was a failed, pathetic experiment that went on there. I do think the offense will improve. I do think the defense will continue to improve because I like the people that they've got out of the portal. Plus, I like the coaches. And there is a style, there is an accountability, a responsibility from those guys over there that maybe was not on the offensive side. Well, I'm not going to say maybe was not on the offensive side last year in terms of overall responsibility, accountability, and success. And so I think they're going to be okay. Now, what is improvement? 4-8. 4-8 this last season. Is 6-6 improvement enough? No, but that's going to be what may be the baseline. What can you go from 6-6 if you can get there? I don't know what is the barrier, the barometer he's going to have to get to be able to stay around. That's only known by people who have far more money and far more power than I do.
Yeah. Dudley, you look around at Arkansas in their position, and we know they've got some big boosters, but what do you know, and everybody knows their names, but they want to see other people get involved. What do you know about Arkansas's NIL collective or collectives? They may have more than one. And how grassroots are they? Because I think the greatest grassroots fundraising effort or group that I know started in 1934, IPTAY at Clemson. It was originally I Pay 10 a year. And Davis Babb is the CEO. We have him on the show occasionally, and he's really good. And he said back in the 30s, people would finance their $10 contribution to IPTAY. That's That's pretty, it's hard to believe, but let's talk about Arkansas NIL real quick.
Well, here's what I'd say. There are good people that Arkansas have involved in that situation in the NIL, but it is just like anything else. It's hard to go out and get people to give you money after you went 4-8. If it had been the season, the second season when they did so well, coming off bowl wins and all that, it's one thing. I do think there was a spike when a certain offensive coordinator got hired because people got all excited about that. But it's going to be, to me, early on, and I think I said this last week, you're going to have to somehow get these people excited before a game happens next year. Because recruiting, a lot of the recruiting these days is done during the spring, really during the winter, the spring, and the summer for the following year. They did a great job at that this year because they were coming off a decent year. It's going to be tougher for the 2025 class because of the product that you put on the field last year. So that's what I say. I'd say they got good people. They do not have one as good as Ole Miss and some others, simply because we've just seen the results. I mean, you can not like Lane Kiffin, you cannot like Eli Drakewitz, but they are being able to get some players, and it's long ago, as I've talked many times. It's long ago been not a sport of business, and the business now is can you get money into kids' hands legally? And it's not for their name, image, and likeness; it's for their pocket.
Yeah. Back years ago, Dudley and Tripp, I don't know if you remember it, but there were people that would say on their jersey numbers, jersey sales, it would be tied into that. You could try something like a universal approach that every player has a jersey, but we know they're doubles. There's a zero on offense sometimes and a zero on defense. So and I don't believe in socialism in any way. It never works. You have to, shoot people to keep them to stay within it so they don't climb over the Berlin Wall. But that don't ever work. Capitalism, that's what works. The best players are going to make more money. That's life. There's the 80-20 rule in sales. But didn't Tommy Tuberville come out with a proposal on a thing like you got to stay at school a certain number of years and whatever? Either way, if we don't figure out something, guys, this stuff's going to keep going on. So but I like what you said about it. You bring in the right coaches and you win, the money flows. All right, let's get to this question. Tommy in Memphis. I'll start with you, Dudley. Tell me what's wrong with Hog basketball. I'm not saying Auburn's not any good, but to lose like that at home, that game was pretty close in the first half. Arkansas started slow before, Dudley. It's not the first time.
That's certainly the case. That's been done before. But I'll tell you this, Auburn looked phenomenal last Saturday and did not look as impressive last night, even though they won against Texas A&M. The difference was Texas A&M fought for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Arkansas fought for maybe 17.
Yeah.
When one of your best players, Kenyon Minifield, who's come on, here lately and played the last 4 or 5 games, openly admits that his team quit. That matches what I think a lot of us saw. It was not an effort. Let's be honest. I've been around this basketball program now for 42 years, either inside of it or covering. That was the worst home effort. And I know there was a 32-point loss, the most points lost by 2 in Bedwell Arena, but that was the worst effort. It was just it was pitiful, and there's no other way to say it. And they have gone to boot camp this week. We'll see if it helps them with tonight's game at Georgia. What a way to come off of that home loss is to go to Georgia and Florida. Both have been playing fairly well. You could very easily be 0-3, and here we go again with the reclamation project. He's got to be getting tired of doing the reclamation project. But I think it's a poorly constructed roster. There's a lot of people that like to score, not a lot of people that like to play defense. And he said this himself, after the game. So, not breaking any scoops here, but it is a team that's energized by Minifield, but really everybody else just, pissed a shutout the other day in terms of passion and excitement. And I've been on several places calling for somebody to get hammered when you go to for a layup. Now you got to be cool about this. You get to hammer them, but try to block the ball. A flagrant foul doesn't help anything. And let's be honest, Auburn responded to the physical nature and brought it back, at Arkansas.
Yeah, and it's a place they've only won 5 or 6 times since 1992. Tripp, you watch basketball, and I think Arkansas plays really good basketball within the state. Very good high school basketball. A lot of these small towns, basketball is the king. And the best teams Arkansas has ever had, Dudley, Tripp, correct me if I'm wrong, have been predominantly in-state players.
Slash
or
Memphis.
Yeah, Memphis, which doesn't count. I mean, that might as well be Arkansas. But anyway, Tripp, your thoughts on it?
Well, first of all, I think now's a good opportunity. I want to show this off to you, Rob. This is probably the coolest thing I ever received. So this is a commemorative ticket from the Arkansas Duke game. On the bottom here has the exact seat section and row where I sat.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it has this picture that somehow, some way, my mom was able to point me out in this picture while I was on the court. So, but that being said, I'm very shocked that it is about not even a month later, Arkansas is playing as poorly as they did on Saturday afternoon. Now, that's not discrediting Auburn at all. Auburn is probably the best team in the SEC right now. I believe that was their 7th or 8th consecutive win over, a 15-point lead. And that was what they won by, I believe, 32 on Saturday. Auburn just completely out-physicaled Arkansas in every, term of the word, because Auburn outran Arkansas. They outsized Arkansas. One thing I noticed, too, on offense for Auburn, they started off hot, especially from outside the three-point arc. And when Arkansas caught on to that and started defending the perimeter more defensively, they started dominating inside the paint. And Arkansas just could not stop Auburn. As a matter of fact, I believe in the first 10 minutes in the second half, Arkansas was only able to score 1 bucket, 2 points for the first 10 minutes of the second half. And Dudley, you're right. Arkansas played only 17 minutes out of the 40. So it was a really tough night for Arkansas fans. I was just shocked watching this very poor chemistry and effort after witnessing the Duke game and within the same season. It was shocking to me.
Yeah, and I would say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, Rob, you are absolutely right that the best teams in history for Arkansas have been mostly Arkansas natives. I remember watching the 40 Minutes of Hell documentary by the SEC Story team. Most of those guys were from Arkansas, particularly Corliss Williamson, who was from Russellville, Arkansas, who committed at age 15. I feel like we need more guys like that, more Arkansas natives who can get invested into the University of Arkansas athletics program. Yeah. Because, we talked about how Missouri is able to come into Arkansas and take great athletes. They did the same for basketball. Little Rock Central's Honor Boateng is probably the best high school basketball player in the state right now in Arkansas. And he's dominating right now from Little Rock Central High School. And he's going to Missouri. And the reason for that is because some speculate that Eric Musselman and the Razorbacks just didn't recruit him as much as he wanted to. Missouri recruited him way more. They wanted him more. So that is a big issue that this Razorback basketball team is facing. They are able to get a lot of talent, but the main issue is it's not in-state talent, and I feel like that's showing on the court with the lack of chemistry that the Razorbacks have been playing with.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
Chemistry is one thing. Also, having been on the bench with Eddie Sutton and Nolan Richardson, defense is part being in the right place at the right time, having your hands up and all that, but it's also equal parts wanting to and caring. And the amount of layups, the amount of easy shots that Auburn got last weekend, beginning in the first half, even when Arkansas was being competitive offensively, and then obviously happening in the second half, was a want to, was a caring thing. It was understandable that a passionate dude such as Eric Musselman, got flustered or got, upset in the post game, because what he saw was, as he said, with the worst home effort he's ever had as a basketball coach, not just at Arkansas.
Yeah, that is a shock. Trip, I know, love having you on here. Dudley, hang on after the break. I'm going to let Trip get back to stuff. I know he's got class and stuff like that, but great insight, Trip. And that's what I love about it. And we got to have people being trained by the best. And Dudley really is one of the absolute best. But let people know real quick before we take the break how they can follow you. And Dudley, stay with me. We'll come back after the break. We're going to have Jake Wimberly, ESPN 105.9, the afternoon drive in Jackson, Mississippi, joining us. Be a lot of fun. But Trip, tag out.
One last thing before he goes through that. Man, next time you're up here, let me know.
Yes, sir. I will absolutely let you know.
Yeah, you got his contact information. Dudley, this is a great conversation. I mean, what y'all just both are talking about, this is how this rivalry with Missouri is about to get pretty hot, because you start getting players out of there, man. But I don't know. I rode all over Eastern Arkansas Sunday, went over to Craig's Barbecue in Duval's Bluff, and I think about these little towns. They produce some damn good players, and Memphis, you can go into Memphis. Arkansas always has been able to go into Memphis and get players. Not that Memphis can't, but anyway, Trip, great stuff, and definitely hook up with Dudley when you're up there. But let them know how they can follow you, and we'll take a quick break.
So I am primarily on Natural State Sports on YouTube, not Natty State Sports, Natural State Sports, the one and only. I'm primarily on the Mills Sports Network, but we cover the Pulaski County Special School District. So that's Maumelle High School, Joe T. Robinson High School, Sylvan Hills High School, and Little Rock Mills. And I've been blessed to be the voice of the Mills Comets for both football and basketball. And occasionally I'll also be on my hometown 101.9 The Lake here in Heber Springs. I got to call a game on radio for the first time last night in the Panther Den for Heber Springs. It was really exciting. That's why you saw my guy Taylor Tubbs there in the comments, who's a real great supporter. One of the best T-shirts that you can ever get there, Mr. Taylor Tubbs, Tubby Tees. So yeah, Natural State Sports. See, it says natural.
Yes.
See,
that's all I'm going to say about it.
I've been thinking that John Neighbors, who's a friend, I'm going to say that, should have called it Bud Light Sports, not Natty Sports.
Oh my goodness.
I love it. All right, Trip, we'll get you back on soon. I hope your Uncle Brian is watching. I know Brian Lensing, one of our members, is watching over in Russellville, Arkansas, Dardanelle over there. Actually, a lot of people love having both of y'all on here. I love it. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back after this on Saturday.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us. our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
Curve everything else. Win, 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 win. These ops ain't lit. Mommy. Win, 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 win.
Hi, Rob Browne back here with Dudley, Dawson, Hogville.net. And Jake Wimberly joins us now down in Jackson, Mississippi, ESPN 105.9, the afternoon drive. Great stuff there, man. Love having these young, up-and-coming journalists. And, man, I tell you what, Dudley, he's so fired up, man. He's definitely going to call you next time he's up there, because you're going to learn a lot from people like you and from Jake. And, Jake, look, we're going to switch gears. We've been talking a lot of Arkansas and SEC football and basketball, what's going on right now. What's going on with you down in Mississippi, specifically with Mississippi State basketball? What are you hearing Jeff Levy's doing? We had the early signing date in December. The portal is still alive, and you can still sign some more high school players in February. Basically, recruiting never stops, but when does the portal ever stop? Ever?
We wished it would, right? Just to give us a breath, just to catch a breath. Good to be with you guys, by the way. Just to catch a breath. You know, this week, I mean, obviously it's been all about the national championship game with Michigan and Washington. You know, peeking into Will Rogers, who was at the game the other night. He had an opportunity to kind of throw around with some receivers in pregame at the national championship game. What does that mean? Quinshon Judkins obviously headed off to Ohio State. What does that do for them? Kind of looking into 2024 college football. And you're right, the portal never stops. Basketball obviously is there, but guys, people are dialed into football in this state. I mean, you know, basketball is going to be a thing for sure. College basketball is awesome. We love March Madness, but people want to know what's Lane Kiffin going to do next at running back? What's Jeff Levy going to do next in the portal? And, you know, what does the 12-team college football playoff look like? Who's going to make it? You know, what are the chances of Ole Miss and Missouri, and how many will the SEC get in next year? Football never sleeps.
It doesn't. And Dudley, hearing what he's saying, we love basketball. We really do. But that's the great thing for this show. I love it. People say, what do you do when football's over? It doesn't ever stop. I mean, it's like this. You have a preseason, the competitive season, the postseason, and the off season. And we know spring practice, somebody will start about the middle of February, so we won't go long wandering in the wilderness, will we, Dudley?
Yeah, and I was doing softball and baseball stories yesterday, and my wife, Petra, she said, well, when does softball and baseball start? I said, less than a month. She was like, oh, my God, it's just nothing. There's never an off time. But she's right. There's, you know, it's continuous seasons, continuous recruiting, continuous news cycle, because there's always something going on. If recruiting's over, there's news about the NCAA wanting to change the recruiting cycle, or you can only transfer 6 times now without losing a season. You know, I mean, Arkansas is going to be playing an Oklahoma State quarterback named Alan Bowman, who will be in his 7th season next year in a non-conference game. And I understand there are a lot of circumstances, but 7 seems like a lot.
It's just, when I think about the off season, there isn't an off season. It's just the level of intensity. I got to ask you, Jake Wimberly, when Quinshon Judkins' story broke last week, I've been hearing for 2 months that NIL was going to play a role in what he did. And people kept saying that Auburn and Alabama were after him. I'm like, I mean, for whatever reason, they didn't recruit him out of high school. Maybe they met his mother. I don't know what the deal is, but all I'm hearing now is the mom was a problem, and never heard a bad thing about the kid. And all of a sudden, boom, it's unbelievable. But he's at Ohio State. And Lane Kiffin had to get rid of Michael Trigg, the kid out of Tampa, who scored 42 points one time in a basketball game. Southern Cal transfer, came back to Ole Miss, didn't work out. Now, I think I'm being told He told Judkins, see you later. Kid goes to Ohio State. Lane Kiffin's pretty bold, isn't he?
Well, he's bold, but I think, he's firm. And I think all these coaches, this is what they're up against. And look, guys, we see this in high school football where parents are giving coaches I see it all the time here in the state of Mississippi, high-level high school football in the state of Mississippi, where maybe you've got 2 quarterbacks on a team and a parent says to the coach, hey, look, if my kid doesn't get a shot next year, we're going across town. It's trickled down into high school. But, these coaches are up against, hey, what's the risk versus the reward? How much money are we going to really pay a player out of our collective? Because there is no salary cap. That would go a long way to, to solving a lot of this. We're not nowhere near having anything like that structure yet. So how much what is your value? And Rob, we talked about this the other day when we had you on and Dudley, your thoughts on this too, is the running backs it hasn't caught up yet mentally with these guys and their suitors or their parents that your value as a running back is not what it was 25, 30 years ago. You're more valuable. Players are more valuable. We see this in the National Football League. If you're an A1 receiver, A2 receiver, quarterback, left tackle, defensive end, a guy that can rush the passer. And I think Lane Kiffin looked at it and said, hey, look, obviously Quinshon is a wonderful running back. He's an All-American type guy, but we're just not going to put up with this. And we're not, we've hit our cap on this, and we'll find another way to move the football. We'll do it collectively, maybe with 2 or 3 feature backs versus one guy.
Yeah, and I think that's going to become one of the trends if it hadn't already. Arkansas has 5 guys. They feel good about it running back next year. Rocket Sanders obviously headed off to South Carolina. He didn't have a good year this year. You could say that was the line. You could say he was a little overweight, a lot of different things. But it's just in college now. It's just like the NFL. You have a salary cap. And do you spend a lot of money on running backs? Do you spend a lot of money on the offensive line? They better spend a lot of money on the offensive line around here at Arkansas because of the way it performed last year. But, you cannot coddle athletes anymore. And that was the case. You could back in the day, but with the way they can just, rip out of there and go to another spot real quick. I think you have to make some tough decisions, and I'm sure this sounds like one. There's a lot of stuff that has been thrown out there. Probably half of it true, half of it not. I'm sure he's going to go have a good season at Ohio State. But if you feel like you're the head coach, and you feel like your team will be more productive, will have a better chance to get deep in the playoff, if you have more unity, then I think it's the right thing to do.
Yep. It is. Jake, that running back by committee, the days of having a running back run for 4,000 or 5,000 yards in your program, now, I don't know when we're going to see that again. And you've got running back rooms with 4 and 5 good running backs. That's par for the course. I like this comment by Gary in Birmingham. Wide receivers are the new running backs. Sorry, I typed it, misspelled mu, but they really are, because you look at
you give if it's a Cowboys fan, you give money to CD Lamb. You don't give money to Pollard and Rico Dowdle.
Yeah, It's a different deal. Jake, you're in Mississippi. You talk about how important football is. Per capita, they produce more NFL players than any state in America. And then the 3 cities that are producing the most players per capita are Mobile, Baton Rouge, and I think Detroit. There's a boatload of talent down in Mississippi. Ole Miss, I think, signed 4 of the top 5. Jeff Lebby, a coaching change is never easy, especially with this December signing period. Give us an update on how you think they finished in that recruiting class and who are some guys that are going after for February, because you can still end up with a top 20 class. There's still plenty of good players out there. Just look at what's in Alabama. I counted it up. 5 5-star players, 18 4s, and 113 3-stars. And Auburn and Alabama together only signed 20 of them. So there's a lot of kids out there.
No, there's a lot of kids out there. And look, Jeff Lebby and I think his staff, they've done a great job on a short time frame to get this thing, kind of somewhat turned around, at least on face value. And guys, look, this is no shocker to anybody. Mississippi State was awful last year. This program, for whatever reason, over the last year and a half, obviously very, very sad, situation with Mike Leach passing, but Zach Arnett and the suitors at Mississippi State, they didn't do this thing the right way. And there's a lot of news about that out there. But what Jeff Levy's done is said, hey, look, we've got to go get playmakers. And you look at them, 4 or 5 wide receivers. They were able to get Stonka Burnside from Starkville High School, one of the best players in the state. You look at Braylon Burnside, some other guys that they need playmakers, and they've got young playmakers coming in that hopefully will make a difference early. It's playmakers that they, honestly just didn't have. I mean, Will Rogers took a lot of flack about this past year, but he just didn't have a whole lot of talent to throw to. And you look at the 2 quarterbacks coming in, transfer from Baylor, freshmen coming in from the Northeast Coast. I think Jeff Levy has done a good job in the portal. He's picked up a couple more guys on the offensive and defensive front. And I think that's what you're going to see moving forward is with February coming up here in the next few weeks, is to try to cap this thing out with, another quality player or 2, and then maybe even save a spot for after spring practice when that second quick window in the portal opens. I think he's done about as good a job as you could ask for any coach on the time frame that he's in.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can tell me if you agree with this. I think there's going to be a bigger wave than there has been in the past couple of years in this second or this late portal period. Whatever we're calling it now, the talent acquisition time. I think there's going to be more. It started a couple of years ago. There were kids that were going through spring practice here at Arkansas and ended up in Oklahoma and other places. I've never understood that. If you don't want to be around, go ahead and go to the other place and go through spring practice. But I think it's 24/7, 365 now. And man, it's time for me to start winding down this career with these things going on.
Don't wind your career. You got a long way to go. But you look at some of these kids.
Winding it down, not quitting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Don't slow down. We need you. The world needs both of y'all because, all of us need to be calling these people out for what they do. You had a kid, Keontae Scott at Auburn a couple of weeks ago, did the big deal, how they do when they go in the portal. These last couple of years have been the greatest. God loved me, and I love my family. I love this, blah, blah, blah. With that being said, and then he goes, 0 is back. And then a couple of days ago, Keontae Scott's leaving. You can't trust these kids anymore. You really can't. And there's no loyalty. And how can you build a culture if you can't trust these people? They're going to find out after their careers are over. And for 99% of them, it's going to be something other than in football or basketball, that lying to people and deceiving people, you're not going to ever get a job. They're going to get. They better figure this one out. But go ahead, Jake. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry about that. I mean to step on you. To kind of double up on what Dudley was saying. Look at Colorado last year. You go through spring practice. They play the big game on ESPN. They had the number one, the first game on ESPN. Georgia was on the dot too. And then after the game, half the kids went in the portal. And then that's where Dion really loaded up, was in that second transfer window after spring practice. And to your point, Rob, you're right. These guys are just in and they're out, and they're here and they're there. I don't envy the job that these college coaches have, because you're looking around and you're saying, all right, our roster looks great today. What's it going to look like in 6 months? And I don't know that anybody particularly knows. And you look at Alabama, it's affecting even the top tier teams. Don't think for a second if Alabama didn't have a center that could have snapped the football better in that game against Michigan, that he wouldn't have played. I just don't think that they had him. And I think that the depth has been killed in places like Alabama to some degree because of the portal.
Yeah.
Yeah. The new catchphrases are run it back. I take it back. Anybody want me, and I'll always be a Razorback.
Yeah. Yeah. What these kids have got to understand is that most of the guys are not going to go pro. You're going to be around some that do, but most of your teammates are going into business doing something to make a living. And if you think about this, if you played at a school for 3 or 4 years and then you just bailed on them, you quit for the bowl game, or you transferred out and left them hanging, eventually it's going to catch up with you. Some employer is going to call where you played and say, well, he was with me 1 minute and then he quit. And they're going to tell what you were like. That's what they better be They better be thinking about that. Jake, looking at what you saw Monday night, let's go back to he does a matrix. It's really cool of all the teams in college football. Let's talk about the takeaways from Michigan, 34-13. I had Michigan to win 34-28. I watched it with some Michigan fans over in Burnt Cane, which is near Round Pond, Arkansas, which is near Hughes, Arkansas. It's some small towns over there, but TK was bouncing off the walls. And I wore this Michigan hat yesterday on the show because people said, "Friend, no, we're an SEC show." We are, but I'll give credit where it's due. What'd you think about Monday night?
I wasn't surprised. And, sometimes you hit these things right. Sometimes you don't when you do analytics. And I had Michigan back last May to win the whole thing. And it looked like coming into this year, Michigan to me was built a lot like Georgia. Not necessarily that they meant to be built like Georgia, but you look at the tight end play, the extra offensive line play, the physicality that they play with on the offensive front, the defensive front. J.J. McCarthy is a good quarterback. I don't know that he is ready to go to the NFL. Blake Corum, a really good running back. But even talking about multiple running backs like what Dudley was talking about, just look at the change of pace for Michigan at running back on Monday night.
Yeah.
They bring in the change of pace back. He rips off 2 long runs, a 45 and a 55 unofficially, and then they bring in a quarterback as a change of pace guy as well. Michigan was just, and I know Southeastern Conference fans don't want to hear this, and it doesn't typically work this way. Michigan was as physical as anybody in the country. They played defense as good as anybody in the country. And hat tip to Michigan and Jim Harbaugh. Now, I think they take a step back next year. I think the SEC is going to be front-loaded in this playoff. Bama's not going anywhere. Georgia's not going anywhere. Texas isn't going anywhere. But for Michigan, they were able to get after Michael Penix, and they were able to play good enough on the back end and cause some issues for Penix to miss some throws to Odunze and some other guys that he typically would hit.
Yeah, and I've heard some things about how this title's going to be vacated. We'll see and all that. But I tell you what, the us against the world really worked around here for Nolan Richardson, and I think it worked for Michigan this year too. They may have won it anyway, but I think that just galvanized them, and that's just nuts. That he missed 6 games this year and ends up not only winning the national championship, but is able to hold out a blank check to either a college university or an NFL team now. I don't think everything he does is cool, but man, he can coach and he can win.
He does. His players, y'all have to admit, love him. They love each other. They play with a lot of passion, and they look like a Bo Schembechler team. They weren't the biggest team, but damn, they got after your ass, and they were quick and physical. I saw maybe 2 poor tackles the whole night. What's one of the most iconic banners that you see when a team runs onto the field every Saturday? The M Club supports you. That's a powerful brand, Jake. And I just wanted to give you credit because you had pointed out, and I felt like Michigan was really, really good. Now, let's throw this one out there for both of y'all. Start with you, Jake. A lot of people say Georgia's still the best team out there. Had they been in the playoff, they would have whipped Michigan. They would have whipped Washington. They didn't whip Alabama. But ironically, the last 3 times Alabama's beaten Georgia in the SEC championship game, they have not won the national championship.
Yeah, I don't know that I can go with. I think Georgia-Michigan would be a wonderful football game. We'll never know. But, look, Georgia struggled with Auburn. Georgia struggled with some other teams this year. There was something missing from Georgia along the way this year. And, you've got to wonder, interesting note that Kirby Smart, goes into the transfer portal to pick up New Mexico or New Mexico State transfer quarterback this week, kind of a change of pace guy. I don't know that Georgia would have beat Michigan this year. We'll never know that. But, they're not going anywhere. They've got the number 1 recruiting class in the country. Yeah. Georgia's going to be the predominant, and I say predominant, they'll probably be most people's number 1 next year, and rightfully so. Alabama will probably be number 2 or 3. We'll see what happens with Texas, Ohio State, but the SEC is going to be front-loaded. Ole Miss should be a top 10 preseason team next year. Missouri maybe could be. We'll see what happens with Tennessee. The league is going to be unbelievably strong next year.
And I would say that I think it would have been a better game than we saw on Monday night, because I do think the roster of both teams, are equated with better talent, more NFL talent. Although Washington certainly got some, but one team won every game they played, and so I'm not going to begrudge them. They won the national championship, and they deserve it.
Yeah. What real quick too, for Jake first, Georgia 63-3 over Florida State. Mike Norvell was pretty fired up in that locker room after the game. Was he saying to all those guys that quit on him, you're not real Seminoles, but I love these guys that stayed through to the end, and you soiled your linens. You soiled this proud brand at Florida State, and hell with you. That's how I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you could definitely go that direction. And, we've talked about this too, and I'm not privy to a lot of these contracts that are written up through these collectives and how these, brokers and people put this stuff together. But I will say this, you would think coaches are going to have to look at this very hard and say, hey, look, if you're coming in, especially with the 12-team playoff, and you're going to come to our school, whatever school it is, Florida State, Mississippi State, Alabama, Arkansas, it doesn't matter, Ole Miss, and you're going to come play football here and you're going to get paid to do so, then you've got a contract that's going to go all the way through the postseason, whatever that postseason is. These guys opting out of New Year's 6-day games. I mean, I don't think that we ever would have thought that was even possible. I mean, it's one thing to opt out of the Birmingham Bowl or the Liberty Bowl. I mean, and I'm not even really a big fan of that. I get it for a guy who maybe has a possible, first round grade in the National Football League, but to opt out of a New Year's 6-day bowl game and then leave your team stranded and then just to get drug. And look, Georgia's not going to apologize, that nor should they, for the score that they put on Florida State. But I think that these teams have to look at this differently with the way they bring these guys in on these collectives.
Yeah, and this take this with KJ Jefferson. He might have ended up with Gus Malzahn in Central Florida anyway. But he couldn't do anything until the day the bowl started, because his contract with the bank, the NIL contract, was written so that he would have to be on the roster, the Arkansas roster, the day the bowl started. He got his final check, then he could, truly enter the portal. There's, that was, I'm sure that the company that did that thought, well, that's the way we'll know he'll play in the bowl game. Well, first of all, there wasn't a bowl game. Second of all, you got to watch that legalese there. Get that final check. And I still go back to the LSU kid that opted out at halftime after getting his record.
Hey, it's just, I don't care. I'm not changing, and y'all aren't going to change. We're not old school. We're the right school. Okay. Your honor is dearer than your life. And this half-ass commitment won't get you anywhere in life. And I talked with, let me tell you something. I know people, we've all done it. You ask me to go mentor kids from, some rough backgrounds or whatever. I don't care if they're black or white. I'm not going to pussyfoot around with them, okay? I'm going to tell them straight up. You better look people in the eye when you're talking to them. You better say yes or no, sir. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Hold the door open for ladies. Just be a gentleman. You're a woman, be a good young lady. But you better learn manners. You better learn about following through on commitment. And when you show up for work every morning, be early and say, what can I do to help? Because if you're trying to be hip, when I look at ESPN and Fox, for the most part, not all of them, it's just a bunch of guys trying to be hip, bunch of hipsters trying to be friends with these guys. Tell them the truth. SEC Network at least has Roman Harper and Chris Doering and Cole Kubelik. And I love these guys, Takeo on there, Matt Stinchcomb. They're different. They're the SEC Network. But we just got a bunch of people that are trying to be best friends with these guys, and they're not telling them the truth about what life's going to be like if they keep acting like this. Because their teammates, hey, man, if I'm an Ohio State football player, I could care less if I see Marvin Harrison again. Who cares? I mean, standing around, it's unimaginable to have a teammate when you're gasping for air to get a first down. I mean, it's a bad look. I know both of y'all are so important to this show and to journalism, period. And I cannot thank you enough. And so, Jake, let people know how they can follow you, and you do the same, Dudley, and I'll let y'all get on with the rest of your day. But you are truth brokers. That's what I love about you.
Thank you, sir. Hey, yeah, you can catch our show 3 to 6 every day on ESPN Radio here in Jackson. That's the zone1059.com if you're outside the listening area. Podcast, just search Jake Wimberly Show, back up on a different platform, but we're on Apple, iTunes, Google, YouTube, everywhere. You can just search Jake Wimberly Show on Spotify. We're all over the place there as well. We'll be rolling out new college football analytics on CFB Hourglass. That'll be a few months from now. Got to get this transfer portal stuff. Don't even know who the rosters are like right now. So, but we will be rolling that out. Dudley, Rob, man, good to talk to you guys as always.
As well. Thank you so much. And Dudley, let them know how they can follow you.
I appreciate you saying that. Now, I'll tell you what. You can tell me I'm ugly. You can tell me I'm fat. You can not like my opinion, but don't question my integrity and character. Yeah. Those are the only things that I've got. You do that, the entire town of Newport will come after you for sure, and a lot of the state of Arkansas.
And Blue Jays.
Yes, absolutely. Hogville.net is our website covering all sports. I'm writing football, basketball, baseball, softball, gymnastics, track and field. So here this week. So along with my high school stories, which is fearlessfriday.com, which is the platform, I guess these cool people say these days, the platform that we use to get that to the people.
Well, it's a great platform. Thank y'all both so much. See you next week. Be right back after this quick break with Doug Dean in Birmingham.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne with Doug Dean down in Birmingham, and that was a great discussion with Jake Wimberly down in Jackson, Mississippi, ESPN 105.9 The Drive, and Dudley Dawson, Hogville.net, as well as Trip Keeter in that first segment from over in Heber Springs, Arkansas. And speaking of Arkansas and Memphis, here in Memphis, we're going to be getting some really cold weather, Doug. I think we're going to have a 2 below Monday or Tuesday, and it's going to lock up, but we're getting the ice heaters out, the generators ready, and ordered 2 more cords of firewood for over in parking at the farm. So we're getting ready for it. Is that a bottle of pop, as they would say, that you're drinking? What is that? Oh, sorry, that's your tag. I'm sorry. It looked like a bottle.
Get rid of that.
I didn't know what that was. How are you doing?
Don't need to advertise my day job. So is that weather going to mostly be Memphis area? I'm a little nervous about those temps.
Yeah, I mean it's Memphis. The forecast, when you look at the 14-day, we're pretty much going to be locked up for the rest of duck season out here. Just if you don't have ice heaters and stuff, but I'm looking here, golly, for Monday. 13 for the high in Memphis Monday, 0 for the low. It'll warm up a little Tuesday, 17 and 9, 30. But you're talking, you're talking it won't be above freezing until January 24th. So, yeah, it's going to be some cold weather. But it's a big front. We've been having mild weather. So, and now that football season's over, everybody's going to be inside watching basketball. But I want to get your thoughts. The best thing you always do is you have some talking points that you want to get to, and I want to get to those and get this thing rolling, because we're not going to be long without college football. About the middle of next month, someone's going to start spring practice. So hold tight, everybody.
Yeah, I've had you probably read or heard the saying, and it applies a lot in writing, that now almost all analogies limp. They're not perfect, but I've thought of one that is, the more I watch, I don't care who the coach is. It could be Coach Saban, the GOAT, and I know he's been missing from the big prize for 3 years, but good grief, he's still the GOAT. And there's 2 or 3 others trying to vie for GOAT status in the post-Saban era, whenever that begins. Who knows if it's 5 years from now or a year from now, but it doesn't matter. But almost no matter who the coach is, Lane Kiffin, who's being called the transfer portal king now, he's earned that because on paper he's landed some what looked like could be some major talent that can contribute immediately. But here's my analogy. It seems to me related to, not to the high school recruits that the big time programs always have to build a foundation from. And Coach Freeze just did exactly that with this 2024 class that's ranked 7th in most of the services. But if you look at the anywhere from 10 to as many as 25, I think in the case of primetime, even 30 plus kids brought in by transfer portal. Here's my analogy, Rob. It is as if they're all playing fantasy football. Are you with me?
Yeah.
You've got no more that, because of the speed with which you have to get a kid's signature on paper or e-document now, e-signing it, they're not visiting 5 or 6 schools and thoughtfully reflecting and giving you a chance for in-home visits. They're going where the NIL money is and the playing time, and in some cases, like quarterbacks, the supporting cast, like Bo Nix did at Oregon. And so you've got no more coaches, as smart as they are, as good an evaluator as they are, they don't have any access. They're armed with nothing more than a stat sheet and maybe some carefully curated, you like that word, Rob, curated videos of the player. And by the way, the videos you get to see are the ones that the player decides they want you to see.
Yes.
So guess what happens from all that? Just like in fantasy football,
Yeah.
a lot of margin of error, and so it'll be fascinating to me to see in the, I think, a fully matured portal process now. It's a screwed up process, we can all agree, because it's just too tilted in favor of the athlete at the expense of coaches being able to plan and have control over the product they're going to put on the field. So this is fully matured. Which teams that go have more than 5 portal gets, which ones really win at that? Hugh Freeze mostly failed at that his first year, which is forgivable because he had so little time. He came on board. He had to go get bodies and hope that it worked out. About 4 or 5 of them worked out. But we'll watch with interest this year the programs that aren't loaded with rosters and bringing most people back. I think Ole Miss is one to keep an eye on. Can they really take a big step and make the 12-team playoff? And that will be the storyline heading into media days this summer.
Yeah, it's going to be. We know Georgia's going to be back. Alabama, Texas. Rodney Orr was on yesterday from Tyler Insider. I asked him about the quarterback room in Tuscaloosa, and he said Ty Simpson's coming back because he thinks he can compete for the job. Not a year from now, but he's talking about this upcoming season. And he referenced Nick Saban's comments early on that said, look, our starting quarterback at Alabama in game 1 might not be our starting quarterback in the 3rd or 4th game. So that position's wide open. But with that being said, with additions in the portal and recruiting, things can change quickly. What should Auburn fans be putting out there as a number? You were really good at putting a number out before last season. And Auburn really, the Bama game, you've seen there's been some fallout. I mean, Ron Roberts is gone. And Montgomery, Monty, he's gone. But what should Auburn fans expect? There's a lot of change specifically there.
Forgive me on the hang on, Rob.
Yeah, and you start looking at what are the fans going to be saying? Hey, what this year you go 6-7, third straight losing season. First time that's happened since 1948, 49, and 50.
Yeah.
So,
I'm sorry about the phone.
Yeah.
I'll dump that in a second. No, I assume when you mean a number, you mean a ceiling, a floor, and a ceiling of wins and losses. That's what you're talking about. And of course, your listeners should first, in full disclosure, know how wrong I was. I thought it had a chance. I thought 7 was fair this past season, and I thought 8. Most of us that are reasonable and not just drinking the orange and blue Kool-Aid would have been ecstatic with 8 wins if you really understood what was going on with the roster and the dearth of talent that was left after Harsin. I don't know what. I guess Harsin improved his bench press personal record during his tenure. I'm not sure anything else I could point to that was successful. So there was a mess cleanup. But now, in fairness to my forecast of floor of 7, ceiling of 8 last year, I think that's what I said. I may have, in a drunken stupor, I might have said ceiling of 9 at some point last year. But if people go back and look, for heaven's sake, Auburn had the Iron Bowl one, and that was over what turned out to be a playoff team in Alabama. And there's no excuse for not handling New Mexico State. There's a couple other, had a chance against Georgia. So it was a satisfying 6-win season, getting back to bowl game. They didn't show up to play in the bowl game. But you look forward to this year, you have to start with the schedule. I think we're going to be greatly improved overall on the roster. We have to wait and see about the QB position because I like Peyton Thorne. I think he's got great leadership abilities. But I don't think Peyton is one of those quarterbacks that, if you will, scares you to death when you're lining up to defend him. There's a way to slow him and stop him. So for Peyton Thorne to get Auburn to a Peyton Thorne-led offense all season, to get Auburn to 8 as the floor of wins, and that's probably ambitious, 9 as the ceiling, and that, people might say, well, that's just not enough improvement. But you look at the schedule; it's very mid and backloaded. Auburn I think this is good actually. Open with Alabama A&M, Cal. These are all home. New Mexico, not New Mexico State, happily, with Jerry Kill. I think he's retiring. And then Arkansas, the opener in Jordan-Hare. Finally, for the first time, Auburn hosts Oklahoma. That'll be September 28th. So that's 5 games to really get settled in on both sides of the ball, your special teams, the quarterback. What these two brand new coordinators are going to bring. Really not a new offensive coordinator. Hugh Freeze is calling plays. Keep an eye on Derek Nix at Ole Miss to join the staff. But then on October 5th, you go to Georgia. Then you go to Mizzou, back-to-back. Those are tough. Oh, might as well add Kentucky to that. 3 on the road in the middle of the season. All 3 of those are losable. I got to go study roster. But then you come back, you got Vanderbilt, Louisiana Monroe. You host Texas A&M. I think they'll still be in rebuilding mode. You can beat Texas, and then you got the Iron Bowl on my birthday, November 30th, in T-Town, and that one's, you have to consider it along with Georgia a loss on paper. But I think if Hugh Freeze didn't, privately say that, look, based on what we think we've got and who we're playing, and improvements we make, especially bringing in some actual wide receivers, both high school elite talents and a couple or 3 transfers. If we don't move 8 or 9 as the ceiling, 9, I think 9 should be the ceiling, but 8 better be the floor. You've got to show that kind of improvement.
Well, in deference to what you said a minute ago, you weren't that far off. You and I both talked about that 8 or 9. I mean, I want to win them all, and I know you do too. But Auburn, Georgia goes down to the last 2 minutes. Auburn, Alabama. I mean, I think it cost people jobs, and that one was that. So there were 8. I mean, the LSU game was the ugly game of the year.
No doubt.
That one was ugly on the road, and the rest of them, this team's competitive. They've got to fine tune it, and the running back room. Well, first off, I want to ask you about Keontae Scott.
I'm going to come back.
and then I'm leaving. What's going on?
Yeah, well, there's two, and it's fascinating. And I'm not, I was disappointed in Keontae Scott that when he entered the portal, in the sense that it looked to me, outside looking in, not based on direct knowledge that I might have, but it looked and felt like when McGriff left Auburn to go to Texas A&M, which is I respect. He wanted to be back on field. He had a dust up with Ron Roberts. It's well documented, and Roberts was reportedly very condescending to him when they disagreed about how much man coverage versus zone for these defensive backs to play. And coaches should be able. You should allow your lieutenants to dissent with you and do so with a little fire, and then you can all shake hands and get back to the job. But so Roberts is gone now. He'll be at Florida. And so I thought Keontae said, I'm mad at Auburn for Crime not staying, and maybe I'll transfer to A&M. He looked at the portal. So did Brian Battie, the scat back, little running back that does some returning. They're both back out of the portal, and both apparently are going to stay at Auburn for another year. So I think what might have actually happened is Hugh Freeze is an amiable guy for the most part. I know for Battie, listen, I know you're frustrated. You want more touches. Why don't if you want to go in the portal and see what options present, then you can still come back out of you have a home here. And he may have said the same thing to Keontae. We did not need to lose Keontae Scott with the short talent we've got on the back end. So I think Battie is back. Rob, we need to put in his NIL contract one stipulation. Can you guess what that is? In Battie? Yeah. The stipulation is at no point will you field a kickoff 5 yards into the end zone and bring it out.
Yeah. That's like the guys that make an interception in the end zone and try to run it back, unless there's just a wide open field and the game's 70-0 or something. You can fumble the ball.
I don't mind that if you're up by 4 touchdowns and you want to see if you house a kickoff. But man, it hurt us. It hurt us in the Iron Bowl. And, because when you're playing these elite coverage teams, they're going to be down there at the 10 if you're bringing it out at 5 yards deep. So anyway, those were two huge pickups. I am worried about the running back room in this regard. We need to start making Jeremiah Cobb happy. He didn't get the ball enough, unless he was having problems with pass protection or fumbling in practice that I don't know about. He needs to have some hope that he's going to see the field. But with Hunter, Jarquez Hunter, I am told, Rob, quietly entered the portal, but I don't think it's been shown on their database yet, so that might not be good information. But assuming Hunter does come back, now you've got 3 bona fide running backs. If you want to count Battie, I wouldn't. I'd try to find some other kind of, Percy Harvin role in the formations for him. And now that Freeze and his new OC and Kent Austin will work together, I think you'll see them design an offense where they really kind of like Bruce Pearl is doing with his roster.
Yeah,
we're going to have a lot of depth. Everybody's going to get their share of touches, and we keep everybody fresh.
Okay, so Keontae Scott, I get that one with his relationship with Crime Dog. I hate McGriff leaving Auburn. I mean, he loves it there, but the Ron Roberts thing, both coordinators gone. Quickly. Kevin in Orange Beach, Alabama. That's what the OBA is, as we all know. I wonder if he eats at Doc's Seafood. Boy, would I love some gumbo tonight from Doc's Seafood. Auburn needs offensive linemen desperately. Also, about Charles Kelly. I know some people that know Charles. They know him well. And we talked about it a lot during the season. Why did he go to Colorado with Deion Sanders? They said he's always liked Deion. Deion's always been good to him. I don't think Deion Sanders is a bad guy. I think trying to do what he's wanting to do at Boulder is very difficult. You talk to anybody that spends any time out there, they're more interested in the next brand of weed coming out at the dispensary than they are staying in a football game. and Dion is super competitive. I don't know how it's going to work out, but let's talk about the offensive line room at Auburn, because that's got to get better. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is; they're going to be running for their life, and that doesn't work.
Yeah, and I wish I could get, and maybe he can type in the chat again, Kevin in Orange Beach, ask him a clarifying question. Does he mean Auburn needs more numbers for depth in the event of injury in O-line? I would tend to agree if that's what he means. If he's saying that we've got some glaring weaknesses, the weakest, you're only as strong as your weakest link, right, Rob? Then Dylan Wade, thank goodness he's coming back, because he's a real talent. But he played left tackle, and a lot of people believe he's really perfectly built to play guard. So if you can, which I'm sure they're working on, and we've had a couple of whiffs in the portal because it's competitive, right? There's probably NIL money being thrown around that, as we allocate the budget for NIL, those are hard decisions, and you might not want to spend $300,000 on a right or left tackle. But if they can find for left tackle, I think you've by the time they go through spring, and there's a couple of names that Jason Caldwell, I'm sure, has touched on your show that you haven't heard of, but they're really turning heads. And I think we're going to be too deep. Pretty good. You got Connor Lew back at center, and imagine his development as a true sophomore coming back. I'm actually very upbeat about this O-line. Oh, by the way, DeAndre Carter, I don't care if he's a freshman, he was just killing it. He was annihilating it. Jamonte Waller, that's the stud 4-star linebacker. We were so excited to flip from Florida.
Yeah.
Carter just almost killed him in one of those All-American, Under Armour All-American games.
Yeah.
So you got guys coming in that by, mid-season, if not sooner, give you quality depth, if not steal a starting position like Connor Lew did. So I actually think quality defensive line depth is slightly more urgent than offensive line, but people they're awfully close. They're both a critical need, as is the question of quarterback.
You talk about DeAndre Carter from modern day Santa Ana, California. 4 of the top 12 players in the state of California from modern day in Santa Ana. 8 of the top 15 players in California signed with SEC schools. 2 of the top 4 with Alabama. Only 2 players in the top 15 signed with a California school, and 2 of them signed with Southern Cal.
Yeah.
It's confusing now with Oregon, going into the Big Ten. All right, so Kelly Leak. Kelly, I don't know where you're from. I'd love to know, because you're knowledgeable. I can tell you that.
Seminole. That's our Seminole, isn't it?
There was another fellow on the other day that's very knowledgeable on the Seminoles, and that's a powerful brand. And if I'm Mike Norvell, I'm doubling down. I'm going to tell these kids on the front end, look, guys, you got to stay with me. I'm giving up a big part of my life for you. That's what you've got to start telling. Damn it, you're a great employer, Doug. You've got to start telling these people. If you don't tell people, if you don't tell people what the expectations are that you have for them, if you have employees, you've got to tell them when you're training them, we expect you to be here every day at work. You've got to show up. You play for this team. You're part of this program. You've absolutely got to be committed. You can't just be partially committed. And so when you've got guys on your team, you're the coach at Florida State or Auburn or whatever, you say, look, you're signing with us. We're committing to you. As long as we're here, we want you to be committed to us. And start talking to them about, I know the portal looks enticing, but you're going to have the same problems you had here when you go there. Nothing changes. I mean, people they dated someone for 5 years and they get married and they go, nothing's really different. If you fight a lot when you date, you'll fight a lot when you're married, and probably more, especially if you have joint checking accounts. That's another story. But Doug, this is how it's going to work. If I'm Mike Norvell, I double. The guy's a great coach. He's an
Yeah, I like
absolutely awesome. I love the guy. Okay.
Like
but Auburn was close on last year about having a really big year. And so, Doug, give yourself credit because you were you were right. You and I both on the Iron Bowl. I had it 27-24. I think the exact score that you predicted. So
Yeah,
give yourself credit for that.
Had the
That's
wrong
impressive.
You know, you just not unlike several other Iron Bowls. You don't get any closer a photo finish, shockingly, in this particular Iron Bowl. And like Coach Saban said, you know, which was really impressively humble of Coach. He said we've been on the wrong side of this one, our fair share, and so it was nice to have a big time play, an improbable play, you could say, go their way. It's going to be shamelessly partisan on a couple of points today, Rob, because they're both historic. But 13 years ago, this very day, January 11th, 2011, was that Auburn finally got that monkey off their back and managed to hang on and beat in 22-19. And, you know, there was one little sad note about that. That's just stuff happens. Of all places, Memphis and Birmingham, a bunch of Auburn people trying to get out of the South and make it to Arizona.
Yeah.
But we had terrific weather and it was canceled.
Oh, yeah.
And some people had shelled out big money, $1,000+ for tickets, and had to eat those tickets because they just couldn't get out. You know, you're not going to drive to Arizona with 2 days notice. So there was a lot of stories to that, and curious things happened. The opening kickoff in that game, guess Mr. Steele trapped for a brain, Rob Browne. Guess who was injured and out for the game on the opening kickoff of that national championship?
Chris Davis caught his right foot in that sprint turf out there at the stadium, the product of Woodlawn High School. Woodlawn's one of the greatest high schools. It's like Melrose High School in Memphis. Woodlawn's a big – there ought to be a Woodlawn award given at Auburn because you think about all the players that have come from there. But, yeah, I remember that well. That's why I hate sprint turf.
Well, I mean, most of us had barely heard of Chris Davis on January 11th, 2011. And, I was mainly bummed that we didn't need anybody injured if you're going to try to win that one. But and little did he know going out with a knee injury, I think it was. And that, like you said, that turf or sod that they rushed in there 2 or 3 weeks before the game and patched it in was horrific. I think it affected the game for both teams. It probably hurt Oregon more because they really love to get you confused and out of position with speed. But I think it contributed to Cam getting injured too. So that was historic. And then last night, Rob, the great Bruce Pearl, and they are the talk of college basketball right now after number 1 Purdue and also I think number 2. Gosh, I'm going blank. We had 2 top teams go down last night. Purdue, and I'll think of the runner-up in a second. But Bruce Pearl gets to 186 wins with that very challenging contest with Buzz Williams and Texas A&M. So he's tied with Cliff Ellis for career wins as Auburn coach, and he's staring down the horizon at the great Joel Eves has 213 wins. So if Bruce stays healthy and stays on the sideline, which we expect, he should break that Joel Eves record in the 2024-25 basketball season. That's just remarkable for him to get there that quick in 11, 12 years.
Yeah, well, he gets everything he can out of his players. Auburn got to win 66-55 last night. That was big. Hey, Franz Beard, God, I love him. He was on the show with us Monday on that Monday power lineup we're doing. Auburn opponents were 83-69 in 2023. Alabama's were 97-58. Florida's were 106-50. That's going to be tough for Billy Napier next year for sure. Doug, hang on with us if you can. Jordan Davis-Hill, 24/7 Sports, covers Georgia. Is going to be on with us. Coach Jackie Sherrill was going to be on with us. Had to reschedule it's going to be next week. He had an emergency meeting come up. That man is active, involved in a lot of stuff. We'll take a break, though, and be back talking some more college football with one of the best in the business. Again, right after this quick commercial message on Sidelines.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Doug, real quick. Franz Beard said Houston was the second team to lose last night. Thank God we got Franz. Talk about a steel trap. 50 plus years of sports writing, and just gets better every day.
Yeah, and the reason I had an orange and blue tinted mental block to Houston, Rob, was that's who took down Auburn right here in Birmingham, of all places, in the March Madness round 2 a year ago. So I had a mental block to even thinking about Houston. But yeah, it's a basketball. People have to unlearn what it's like to be a football fan when basketball rolls around. You're going to have some losses unless you're some really historically dominant team. But if you just watch what Bruce is building with, he doesn't have a true super mega star, but he's got 11 deep and they can all play. When he bench, there's hardly any drop off. So when you get to February and everybody's starting to be tired, Bruce's team should have some extra legs there. It's going to be fun to watch.
It is. It is, absolutely. Jordan Davis-Hill, 24/7 Sports, covers Georgia Bulldogs. Also does a great podcast. You need to follow him. He puts a lot of quality content out all over social media. Jordan brought this up just a few minutes ago, and this is a consensus among a lot of my peers, is that I don't care what happened, Georgia still would have whipped everybody in that playoff group. Now, they didn't beat Alabama. We know that. But the last 3 times Alabama's beaten Georgia in the SEC championship game in Atlanta, they went on to not win the national championship. But Georgia made their statement against Florida State. They ain't going anywhere. They're going to be back next year. Let's talk about the state of the culture there in Athens heading into spring practice, which will start next month. So, folks, we're not going to go long without college football. It's going to be okay.
You're right. We'll find a way. I know. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's disappointing for Georgia fans that they didn't win the national title. We were talking about this with a few of the other beat writers. I mean, the SEC title game essentially was a play-in game, and they didn't win it. And I still stand by the fact that they have nobody to blame but themselves, because they knew that it was possible to get left out in that situation. Now, having said that, when you look at 2024. I don't think you can think of a better motivation that Kirby can use than the fact that, hey guys, we missed out and we probably could have went and won another national title. I don't think that that's going to be forgotten. I don't think Kirby Smart's going to refrain from bringing that up, especially with the guys that are coming back. So I think that there is an excitement. I think that, you're all these way too early rankings, all the betting odds already for 2024, and Georgia is either number one in a lot of those or right there as one of those teams. So this Georgia team's got a chance to be really special again, be really good. Schedule is super tough, but they picked a good year 12 playoff, because I think it's going to be very hard to make it through undefeated, going to play at Alabama, at Texas, at Ole Miss, who I think is going to be really, really good in 2024. You can afford a little bit more of a loss, maybe even 2 losses, and still make this playoff. I think Georgia's trending in the right direction, getting ready for next season.
Doug.
Jordan, good. Happy New Year, belated Happy New Year to you and Bulldog Nation, and including, what's the name, Rob? Lauren Smith.
Yes, Lauren, what do you got?
Yeah, he's a legend. But this is I'll confess up front, a kind of deliberately ridiculous and unfair question, but it might be the talk of, shall we say, just some segment of the Georgia fan base. I don't know. You're closer to that, and that's why I want to ask you. But unfairly, I'll say, does Mike Bobo get, to a degree, scapegoat treatment for that? It was really just one game that they couldn't quite dial up just 1 or 2 more plays that would have given them a chance to beat Alabama. But as we sit, he's still on staff. Is Kirby returning, Bobo, or do you see Kirby Smart making any changes in the offensive brain trust?
Nah, Bobo will still be the offensive coordinator, and I think that he has unfairly been scapegoated, and really it was through the whole season, which is just, I think if Mike Bobo heard any of it, he's used to it from his first 10 years offensive coordinator. He talked about it in the lead up to the Orange Bowl. He was asked, what went wrong in that Alabama game. And he said, it came to a lot of 3rd and shorts that Georgia had done a very good job of getting, and they just did not get against Alabama, kind of put them behind the 8 ball. And, you look at that Alabama game, I get people were disappointed. Georgia scores 24 points, a little bit less than we're used to seeing them score, but, it was kind of a handful of plays that made the difference in that game. They have a false start on a field goal that pushes it back. They wind up missing the field goal. I will say, if you want to criticize Mike, I think they tried to do a little jet sweep reverse, and it got fumbled, and it was deep in Alabama territory. And Georgia's defense, to their credit, only allowed a field goal, but wound up losing by 3 points in that situation. So, no, I'm not anticipating any changes there. I think Mike did a very good job, and at the end of the day, they didn't make enough plays. I thought they were also hampered by the fact that their receiving core was really beat up in that Alabama game. Brock Bowers not playing 100%, Lad McConkey not playing 100%, Ra Thomas not playing at all, dealing with a foot issue, and it felt like they kind of struggled to get separation. So I get that fans were upset with Bobo, but I think a lot of it was unfounded, and I definitely think he's going to be back for another year.
Yeah, it occurs to me. It's almost like fans, not the fraternity of coaches who understand that the old saying I really like, that the other guy's trying to win too. the opposing team has some ideas, they've got some assets and resources. They deploy it right and execute. You can get got in a big game like that one. But it's almost like fans feel like, all right, I was entitled, especially Georgia, they were working on a three-peat. I'm entitled to this 3rd national championship. That's the order of the world. That's how it's supposed to be. I'm sort of parodying Jordan, how not just Georgia fans, most fans are. And since we didn't get that opportunity, I need somebody's head on a platter, and it might as well be Mike Bobo, right?
And the thing is, too, with him replacing Todd Monken, I mean, it was going to be really, really hard to replicate that. And it would have been hard if Todd came back, because they lost some bit. They were breaking in. Kenny McIntosh, I think, kind of gets forgotten because he was such a good pass-catching back, and they didn't really have that on this past team. So, yeah, I think Mike sort of knew what he was getting into, and he's probably at this point learned to tune all that out. But that doesn't stop people from posting over there on the junkyard over at Dogs 24/7. There's always somebody. Even those games they were blowing out, you'd have a few incompletions, a driver they punted, and people were up in arms about how it was going.
Rob, but if you don't mind me hogging just one more question, I'll get out.
That's what I got you on here for. You're not hogging it off. I want this discussion going on.
This is, your listeners might find this intriguing, and it's kind of an unanswerable question, but I think most of us we're excited in many ways at the ability to go out. If you've got money boosters and fans that support the NIL collectives, and you just need a few billionaires to augment that, then you're in the hunt. You can have a salary cap, if you will, that rivals just about anybody. On the other hand, we're also frustrated that at the apparent lack of commitment and loyalty to your program and your university and your culture in this 24/7 free agency that we have. And so I was talking to I'm not going to name him by name because I'm not sure he wants it, but a very prominent and highly successful Alabama high school football coach who's wearing more than one ring at that level. And we were talking, and he said, you know, what Auburn, what any program has got to do, you got to go get your share of high 4 and 5 stars, elite players that are impact players. But he said, and this is the part I want y'all to react to, it's interesting to me. He said, you better also go find those, and this Stetson Bennett was this, I believe. Go find 10 or 12, maybe 15 players that absolutely love your program, love your university to the point. He said, here's what that looks like. When you lose a tough game, this player is in the locker room crying. That's how much they care, because they're going to be the core. They're going to help you with your culture, and they're going to stick around like Stetson Bennett did. Now, you could say, well, he didn't have first-round draft prospects. That played a part in him sticking around, but, yeah, that misses the point. So do you agree that even though there's a pressure to be finished 1 and 2 like Georgia and Alabama had in recruiting rankings, that they culturally, I bet both Saban and Kirby would say, you know, we also got to make sure we sign in-state players that really love the history and culture of and what it means to wear that either Georgia red and black or Alabama crimson and white or orange and blue at Auburn. Do you think there's something to that as you put a team together and try to create a winning culture, Jordan?
Well, I'll start it and say, I don't know if it's so much loving the university, but loving football. And I bring that up because that was basically word for word what Todd Hartley, Georgia's tight ends coach, said leading up to the Orange Bowl. You know, we all were pretty sure that, you know, Brock Bowers was pretty much done. Maybe he played in the Orange Bowl. He wound up not playing. But, you know, someone asked Todd, what did you learn from coaching Brock Bowers? And he said, you've got to get guys that love football. And he said, and it's always hard to tell. You don't really know if that's the case till they get here. But, you know, he said Brock Bowers was a guy, you know, he was recruited during COVID. And he's a guy that's sending in videos of him running up and down hills and doing everything he can because he was out in California where the season got canceled. And so I think it's stuff like that. I think you saw it with guys like Ladd McConkey. You know, he battled through injury. He was a guy that could have shut it down, not played in the Orange Bowl, but he played. Brock Bowers, Kirby talked about this when he was coming back. 26 days after he had had tightrope surgery, that high ankle sprain, and he's back. And Kirby told everybody after the Ole Miss game, he said, you know, he had people reaching out to him saying, look, don't play. Just go ahead and turn your attention to the NFL. And Kirby said that pissed Brock Bowers off. He was like, you know, that only motivated him more. So I don't know if it's so much a loyalty to a school and saying, well, I grew up a Georgia fan. Because like Ladd McConkey, to the chagrin of Tennessee people listening, he was a diehard Vol. And they really did not recruit him. And they tried to get in the last minute, and Georgia had kind of beat them to the punch. But I think you got to get guys that love the game and understand, you know, what it takes and makes it the top priority, because a lot of guys don't do that. And I can understand that to a certain point, but I think some of these programs understand what they're looking for in guys and understand what is asked of them. And, you know, you get guys around like Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey, it leads to, you know, coaches knowing what they're looking for when it comes to the players that are coming up.
Very well said. And Rob Franz Beard, it's only Franz can do, said the secret of success in modern D1 football, a few Boy Scouts and the rest of the team borderline psychopaths.
No, and I mean, it is. You've got to have guys that want to be there. And you go back to a very telling comment that Kirby Smart made last year when asked about Carson Beck. He said, I don't know. I think he's been in the program like 3 years. He goes, but he's bought in. He is invested in Georgia, and he wants to come back. That's what's going to happen. That's when people criticize me for talking about, they'll see some stupid thing. They go, there's your free market, Rob. Well, I'm telling you, it's the way it works. You're going to ultimately, the culture, guys are going to be pushed back when they come on a recruiting visit, because eventually what's going to happen, we're going to get these guys to say, yeah, I really do want to be here. And if you don't want to be here, I don't want you as a teammate. That'll correct itself. There's only so many jerks that you can tolerate being around. That's just how it goes. And what Kirby's doing at Georgia is he's got those guys believing that what he says and what he preaches every day in practice and all season works. And look at the results. That's what other coaches ought to be doing. And Doug and Jordan, I'll criticize Hugh Freeze. Please, for God's sakes, don't ever again, before you travel across the country to California, complain about having to do it. Flip the script and say, what a great opportunity to take this proud Auburn brand across the country to California, our fans to see the Bay Area, to have a great trip, to go out to California, to play a proud Pac-12 school. This is a great opportunity. I mean, it's a little bit of distance and all, but we're going to embrace it. We're going to have fun with it. 95% of life is showing up with a positive attitude and some walking around money. And Jordan, wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Anybody?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things too. You can feel a certain way, but that doesn't mean you need to advertise it. It's even, I don't cover Auburn closely as I used to, obviously, when I covered them, but like Hugh talking about, well, I should have taken this bowl game more seriously. I didn't do the job, and I will give him points. I will give him points for being transparent, but I don't know if that was the smartest thing to say after a very disappointing end of the year.
I'm out, guys.
Doug, thank you so
Good
much.
seeing you, Doug.
Yeah, look forward to having you back on Saturday. And I'm going to tell you, I've got friends from Tuscaloosa that know Kirby Smart and his wife very well. They're Auburn people, but they really love him. They really like him, and they wanted him to get that Auburn job, but it didn't happen. But he's listen. If I'm just some guy out there in America, and I'm looking at coaches and where I want to go, how you not going to be turned on by Kirby Smart and what he believes in, what he stands for, and his enthusiasm? And he's an investor too. He gets paid well at Georgia. That's a known fact. But he also invests in the university that he loves. And again, every week I bring this up with you and other people. Don't lose sight of the fact that he's the son of a damn good high school football coach named Sonny Smart from Bainbridge, Georgia. You ever been around him and his dad when they're together? I wonder what that's like. I bet there's some serious napkin plays drawn up. What do you think?
Probably so. And what I'd say too, when it comes to, the pitch from Kirby to prospective Georgia players, what you're signing up for. I've heard plenty of stories about, recruits that'll come to a practice and, he's, on the mic, letting his team have it. And I don't think he's hesitated from telling recruits on the sideline, hey, get off your phone, be paying attention to what we're doing. Basically like, look, everybody, he's keeping everybody in line, even the guys who may not ever, play a down for him. So he's the genuine article. He's a guy that you don't have to wonder exactly, okay, he said this. Does he really mean it? I'd say 99 times out of 100, whatever Kirby is saying, he means it. I think that goes back to after the Orange Bowl. He made it a point to say this needs to change. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't think he was, if I'm remembering right, he wasn't asked specifically to comment on that. He made a point to say it. So he's a guy that, when he speaks up, I think that there's some sincerity to it. And it comes on the practice field, and every once in a while you'll see it too in his interviews.
Yeah, he's knowledge of the game, but also hands-on. And he's got Glenn Schumann, Will Muschamp, Mike Bobo, and Doug's right. You know, he gets unfairly criticized a lot, but the guy's a damn good coach. And the one year he wasn't at Georgia was the last year for Mark Richt. Goes to Colorado State. Look, it's hard to win out there. It's not, I'm not saying it's easy to win in the SEC, but you certainly have more talented players. So, have they set a date for when Georgia starts spring football practice?
Not yet. It should probably be the second week in March, but they've kept it under wraps so far. So that's what I'm preparing for. I think there's going to be some teams that start a little bit earlier, but it's usually like the second Tuesday in March, if I'm remembering. So Georgia's usually pretty good at being consistent with their calendar, but we'll see if they let us know anytime soon.
Well, again, and I go back to this thing. We just got a couple of minutes and we'll let you go. But Georgia's opponents last year, Franz Beard, GatorbaitMedia.com. Love it. He's on our show with us every week. Love the guy. And he puts out so much good information like you do. 90-63 last season. That's average 7.5, 8 wins, you know, for a team. That's pretty competitive. But you know what's going to be the most fun is this offseason is the back and forth. The Big Ten has surpassed the SEC. How fired up and how motivated will that make Kirby Smart? You alluded to it earlier about how he's, you know, getting fired up, but it's going to make every SEC fan base just going crazy.
I think it's just going to be a fun off season because now you have two total unknowns with Texas and Oklahoma, and obviously we know they're really good, but we don't know what exactly this is going to look like. And you know, I think I have a pretty good feel for Texas. Obviously, we'll still see if there's more guys who declare for the draft. I know A.D. Mitchell, who was at Georgia before, he declared, and I think a few other guys have. But like Oklahoma, you could tell me Oklahoma goes 9-3, and I'd be like, I could see it. Or you could tell me Oklahoma goes like 4-8, and I'm like, you know. So it's going to be interesting from that standpoint. And it's funny when it comes to Kirby. You know, he doesn't get a ton of questions about like Big Ten and SEC, but anytime schedule's asked, anything like that, he's like, anyone wants to come play our schedule, come play it. And I think that would be the mindset he's going to have. It's like, hey, I get that the Big Ten just added a bunch of teams, but SEC just got a whole lot harder. And I think we're going to see that with some of the teams because, you know, I think it's always funny when I go into a season and predict games and stuff like, oh, so-and-so is going to have 6 losses, 7. Somebody's got to lose these games, Rob. You know, there are no ties. It's going to be a very interesting 2024 from that standpoint.
Well, you and I talked about it last season. I kept saying it's easy in June when you're at the beach to read a magazine and say, oh, this is going to be easy. And it doesn't work like that. Remember that gauntlet that Georgia had to deal with? Missouri in Athens. Then they had to play Ole Miss, which they trounced 52-17. But Ole Miss is still that was a big time win. Ole Miss ended up winning 11 games. Then they had to beat Tennessee and Knoxville, and they beat them soundly. Then they had to play Georgia Tech, a suddenly resurgent Georgia Tech who is getting better. So yeah, you can talk about all that stuff, but once the season starts, all that goes out the window. Hey, great stuff. As always, most often we see the face of Christ and least among us, folks. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. 95% of life, again, show up with a positive attitude. Go out and help other people. I'm going to tell you something. Find good things. Find excuses to win. Jordan, let people know how they can follow you and all the great work that you do. And we always appreciate you sharing your time with us. It means the world to us and our listeners and viewers.
Appreciate that. Dogs247.com on Twitter at George Davis Hill on Twitter at Dogs247. I tell folks, go over to Dogs247 YouTube. We're going to have a live podcast at 12 p.m. Eastern time, just talking about all the off-season stuff. And you know, as much as there's no football now, you know, with the championship game in the can, still a lot of football to talk about. And like you said, Rob, we'll be back to spring practice before we know it.
It's not really no football. It's just a different phase of football. Hey, be careful. Have a great one, Jordan. And we'll be back tomorrow morning, folks. We are out of here.